Alpha.
Hi, I'm Ben Pilling, the Technical Marketing Manager for Sony Europe, and today I'm joined by Tom Oldham, who is a multiple Sony World Photography Award winner. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Ben.
So to start off, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do.
Well, I'm a portrait photographer. My name's Tom Oldham. I've been freelance for 20 years, which seems like an enormously large amount of time to have been dedicating myself to this. And it's a real surprise when I say 20 years, because I never ever dreamt that I could string this out for that long. So even I'm impressed by that. Okay. I shoot portraits for a series of magazines and commercially and for NGOs, and for my own projects too. So quite a broad spread of activities I like to put myself across.
Cool. And then just as a start off, how did you get into photography, kind of amateur-wise, and then how did that progress into professional?
I had a really boring job. So I don't come from art, and we didn't have cameras or photography in my household especially. I had a really boring job in a clothes shop in Bournemouth. You can see already I'm quite sartorially aware. And for my 21st birthday, I wanted a watch for my birthday. And a girlfriend I had at the time said, why don't you get a camera? I think she liked the idea of going out with a photographer. And she didn't last, but the photography did. And I did a night class, and then eventually sort of plucked up the confidence to go to art college in Plymouth, the Plymouth College of Art, and do a very basic BTEC national diploma in photography. But at that time, we still got a grant to go to college, and I had the grand privilege of it not being a huge financial risk to get into photography. So I moved down to Plymouth. I was living in Dorset at the time, and the really, really great thing that happened after that was that I got a job in the college. So once I finished the course, I became a stores person, handling all the equipment for students, and then later as a technician, so in the dark room. So really learning. It was a really nice cushion actually to have a sort of salary job, but within photography, and I was able to work on my own stuff and start shooting editorially and putting my own work out there, and also helping the students and seeing where they were getting everything wrong constantly and helping with them, and also sort of vicarious learning through that as well. So when I was 29, I left Plymouth and went to be a sort of freelance photographer really in December 1999. That was back in 99.
And then your current process for photography, so your everyday shooting. Tell us a little bit about that. So in terms of, are you working alone? How do you set up, is there a typical way you set up the lighting, or how's also the post process of that as well from a typical job? And do you get very strict briefs from clients? Is it just a large variety, that kind of thing?
So that's a great question. There's no real pattern necessarily to the requirement that we will get through if we get a brief. So the normal thing comes in: would you like to photograph this person on this date? And you say, is there any particular thing that you might be after with this? But usually they're booking me because they know that I'll interpret it in some way that they want. So I book my team, which can be anything from just a lighting assistant to a digi and a second assistant and a runner or producer. Make sure that I have all the equipment. I own most of my equipment, so I don't really necessarily always have to rent too much, which is quite helpful. And then we go and search everything that's been photographed with that person before, just to make sure we don't overlap with, because like this has happened where you photograph someone and go, oh man, I love that. And actually what you've done is replicated a shot of them you've seen before, which is really awful. When it happens, you go, I'm really proud of this. Then you look and go, oh God, no, I've just copied something without realizing, which is it's a crime. It's such a crime. So we always try and avoid that. So that hasn't happened, hopefully, for quite some time. So we really, really work hard to ensure that our ideas are original and new, and they have to look appropriate for the people that are asking you to shoot them, but also for us as well. So we want to push I keep saying we, but my aesthetic, I suppose. And then we check out the location, whether it's studio or location, and ensure that all of that's aligned to what we need, and then go to town.
And then when you're shooting, is it a case of afterwards you go back and look at stuff for quite a few hours and deliberate over stuff, or is it more a case of at the time you've got the shot?
You have to know at the time you've got the shot, and you have to have checked and tested that you've got the shot on set before anybody leaves. So you have to have zoomed in, seen that it's in focus, no motion blur or anything like that, no bits of rain on the lens. You've really got to know for everyone's sake, because otherwise you've wasted everyone's time. So in edit terms, it's a real mistake to do a really fast edit.
Okay, well, let's move on to having a look at some of your work. Maybe you could talk us through those.
Sure.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about this very recognisable face.
So this is Dave Grohl from Foo Fighters. Pointing your lens at someone like this is all we all really wait for. You wait for the call when, would you like to photograph Dave Grohl? And it's obviously a big fat yes. And all you want him to do on the day is bring maximum Dave Grohl with him. And as you can see, I filled my frame with Dave. And just something characterful, he really brought it. And, again, this is one of those shots that was sat in the edit that I didn't, wasn't used for the magazine at the time. And it sat there and you think, that's worth a look, And like his hair looks magnificent, his attitude's right there, and he's really filling the frame, and that's absolute gold for someone like me.
And then, kind of, how long did you get with Dave Grohl? Was it a very quick thing, or was it a bit longer time?
He was enjoying the shoot that day, so it actually on the second day of photographing him. So I think we had an hour slot with him and the band, and it went really, really well. So they were in high spirits and really enjoying it. So when it's like that, as long as you keep the ideas moving and keep it animated and colourful, and they're terrible when they get bored. Where boredom lives, there's mischief, and some mischief can be good, but really you want to try and corral them into a focused sort of moment, and we were able to do that, which is really, really good. Yeah. At one point during the shoot, I noticed all my flashes were popping, and I wasn't doing anything, and I looked at my lighting guy at the time and go like, why is it popping off? And he pointed at Dave, who had picked up my other camera that had a flash on it, and Dave Grohl was like walking around taking photos of his mates. But unfortunately, they were all terrible photos. But, otherwise, I would have used them. But he was what you would hope.
Okay, let's move on to the next one.
Right.
So another recognisable face.
Yeah, this is Jose Mourinho, quite a well-regarded by some, controversial football coach. He is, all you really want also is his sort of magnificence. He owns any space that he's in. I photographed him before and did a really classic black and white setup, and this is quite interesting. This is for something called Coach's Voice, and we wanted a sort of, I wanted to relate the sort of colours of some of the clubs that he's coached for, but the background there is actually a fairly ropey plastic sheet with a light behind it, and it was a bit of a bold choice to sort of, we sort of cheated it really, because when he walked in, we got him in position, and then we hoisted the plastic sheet while he was looking the other way, basically, because I didn't want him looking like, I didn't want him to see that basically we were going to photograph him what looked like a sort of building site. So we had to sort of cheat this, and it's just to get some texture, some atmosphere, and just a different sort of format. And then we lit him with a blue light overhead, and I think he looks brilliant in this. This is exactly what I wanted it to look like. And, like I said, he's got a commanding sort of presence anyway. And he is the coolest guy you'll ever be in the space of. So we wanted to reflect that. And I was really pleased with this.
And then is that the kind of idea you come up with when you're there? Or is that something you pre-plan beforehand? Or does it vary by situation?
Definitely pre-plan beforehand, because you can't be hanging around going, oh, let's try this, when he's there, because I probably had 3 minutes or something, and so you've got to have your ideas ready. We also did like a black and white, black background setup with him, which is really, really quick, just like pull down the sheet and whack up get a short colour armour in there, and you just don't have any time for playing with your setup. You know, you've got to have it absolutely down, and that's got to be clearly communicated with your team, and everyone has to be really invested in achieving that result in situ, because the moment they get bored, they'll walk, and you can't have them sort of decide when it's over. That said, we'll look at somebody in a minute who did decide when it's over.
Okay, so let's move on. Tell us about this.
So this is Slumflower. She, I did this project called The Longest Day, which was where I shot 24 portraits in 24 hours, and there's a nice little film of it on my website. And we met her and bumped into her on the street at about 5 o'clock, I think, on that day. And she was this incredible character and just looked absolutely amazing. And she's a really vocal blogger and style blogger and commentator and writer. And I asked her if we could sort of keep in touch and if I could do a studio shoot with her. And she brought her wardrobe with her, and we just did loads and loads of setups in a day. She was absolutely fantastic to shoot and brought this vivacity and spirit and energy. And you know, she isn't looking to camera, she's talking during this shot, but it's still made for a much more engaged, very straightforward, but just colourful, punchy image that I'm still really, really proud of. And I shot this quite a while ago, and I just love the energy of it. And it couldn't be more straightforward in lots of ways, but it's just slightly removed from that obvious choice, I think, again.
Cool. Moving on, tell us about this.
This was for Mojo magazine. Jarvis Cocker is a singer from a band called Pulp, and he also has a solo work, and this was shot to launch his sort of solo project, and Mojo were doing a feature, so they wanted something that suggested sort of evolution, and this was shot in camera with multiple flashes, so setting the flash to do on a long exposure to do a burst of flashes, and I wanted some movement from him, and it sort of suggested a vulnerability and a sensitivity, the way he was kind of protecting himself with his hands, and it worked really, really well and looked amazing on the page. I really like to experiment, and I was proud that he trusted us enough to come with us on the idea and actually bring some performance. And he has a lot of movement in his live performance, and happily, he was really willing to bring some of that with him into the chapel at the House of St Barnabas in central London. So we shot it in there, and he was absolutely great. And I just think to try and encourage some risk taking and really to try and use some of the capability of the equipment we use.
And then where do you go for your inspiration for these types of things? Because so far we've seen Dave Grohl looking straight to camera in full colour. We've seen some very vibrant colours. Now we've seen, like I say, multiple flashes. Do you think to yourself, I don't want to take the same shot again and again? And where do you kind of go for your inspirations? Kind of push yourself a little bit.
I think it's for your own sanity, really, just to keep it. I would dread that I would be known for having one look, because that can be quite a short-lived experience. You might burn really hot for a while, but if you've got one look to what you do, people love to pigeonhole. Clients love to pigeonhole that. Tom's, say, the black and white natural light guy, which would be a great position to be in, and you'll always have some demand, but I think it would be quite kind of limiting in terms of creativity and expression. And I don't really have a signature look, I don't think, but I just really enjoy the fun of photography. And like I said, I've been doing it for 20 years and been photographing it for nearly 30 years, and it would be a terrible thing to get bored of. Yeah. So this is Sir Richard Branson. I've had the pleasure of photographing Richard quite a few times in my life, but he's always been holding someone or on an aeroplane or just making some sort of gesture, holding a flag or a banner or a person. And I've never got a really beautiful portrait of him. And he has quite a commanding presence and, a really famous look that we're all aware of. But this is a lesson to everyone about getting your ideas and your technical knowledge down so that your creativity can flow, right? So I was at his house in Oxfordshire and shooting an event in his back garden, and I said to the PR, who I knew quite well, I'd really love to get a portrait of Richard. Nobody really knows this, that this is what I had to do this day, but I really wanted a portrait, and we sort of created, and I said, of course, that his people could use it if they liked it. So we cooked up this scenario where Richard came in, and I don't know how he knew this, but I only got 3 frames, right? And then he went, great, thanks very much, all done, and it walked off, And I think he probably knew that we were just doing it for my own pleasure, but he gave us the shots, and we got them because we were ready. And we knew what we were going to do, and the assistant knew where to hold the light.
So this is an image that I do recognise. Tell us a little bit about this.
Well, this is from my project, The Last of the Crooners, which was shot in the Palm Tree Pub in Bow, which is a really beautiful, super old school East End pub that has had music every Friday, Saturday night, and Sunday nights, live jazz from a series of really old crooners performing it on by and large for 40 years. And I'm a relative newcomer, and I've only been going there for about 20 years. So they very kindly allowed me access to shoot portraits of some of the performers, and it became a series of work called The Last of the Crooners. And it was a comment on the changing landscape of East London and how people like me are coming in and gentrifying the place, and it was really important to me, and I really, really love the work, and we produced a beautiful vinyl album from it. And you know how you get those emails that say you have 24 hours left to enter the Sony World Photography Awards, and I really deliberated over whether I should enter it or not, because there's this thing that you've got to be feeling fairly robust, I think, about your work to face rejection with it. And I really love this work, and I wasn't sure at all whether I wanted to enter it for a competition, basically fearing rejection and how that might tarnish my image of the project. And I really didn't want that. But nevertheless, the house was quiet. It was 11 p.m. I had 1 hour left to enter this competition, and I wrote some very average captions and drag and drop 10 files into this folder, into the uploader of the competition. And I'm really glad I did, because I ended up winning the professional category for portraits that year, and winning some lovely equipment, and just getting a huge amount of publicity for both me and the pub. And it was an astonishing award, and to be recognised for such a massive global prize was an incredible compliment, and for a fragile ego like mine, it was a wonderful thing. So yeah. So
talk us through this image and what this is about.
This was shot for Mojo magazine again. This is Frank Black, who's the singer of the Pixies. When you enter the professional part of the competition, you enter a body of work, but for the open side, it's just one image. And I used to walk around the open category, the shots at the exhibition at Somerset House, which is a beautiful, amazing place to exhibit. And I thought, you've done really well, Tom, to show your work in the professional category, but I don't think I've ever shot a single image that could be in this room, because there's some incredible work in there. And I'm not talking myself up by saying that, but I still entered the portrait category, and again dragged and dropped 10 different pictures that I thought might resonate. You hope might resonate, but I had no idea. And this year, it feels weird even saying it, I won the portrait category, and then those 10 categories are put forward. The winners of those 10 categories are put forward, and I won the Sony Open World Photographer of the Year. And that just is indescribably massive for me. And there's 300,000 entries or something like that, I think. Is that right?
Similar to that, yeah.
Yeah. And for mine to be picked out as the winner just is so colossal that I still haven't really kind of processed that.
If we look on some of your other images, are these feet we should know?
You do know these feet. These are the fastest feet ever in the history of all feet, which is a good title for a photo, I think. I had the grand privilege of photographing Usain Bolt for Puma, one of my clients, Puma, and in between changes, he was stood next to me, and we didn't even move the light. It just happened that it was facing the right way, thankfully, and I got a shot of Usain Bolt's rather knackered-looking feet, and he was like, "Why are you taking photos of my feet?" And I was like, "Well, they are sort of notable feet, aren't they? You know." And I just put this in the mix today because just to illustrate that sometimes portraiture can be less obvious in your approach, and I think those feet are interesting. I think it's a successful portrait of Usain Bolt, but not that he isn't beautiful, because he really is, but there's something interesting in taking a less obvious approach, and I thought this illustrated this really well.
Perfect. Moving on from feet, we've got a hand.
It's right. Don't tell me I haven't got range. I can do the lot. So I also had the astonishing privilege once of shooting Gordon Banks. So Gordon Banks, who was the goalkeeper for the 1966 England World Cup team, and that hand is known as doing the best save in all goalkeeping in the history of football, and which was against Pele, in I think in the 1970 World Cup. And he just, I said to him, "Sorry, Gordon, would you mind telling me which hand?" And he went, "This one." And I was like, "Would you mind if I got a portrait of your hand?" And I really, really love this, just for its simplicity. And he was an utter gentleman, and it was an incredible privilege to spend some time. And we were on a really tight schedule. We had PR people ushering him around Wembley, but he just wanted to tell me stories. And I just was blocking these people out like that, going, "Go on, yeah, go on, amazing. I can't believe this is happening." And he was fascinating. He was one-eyed, you know, which means he should have no sort of depth perception. But of course, he was an incredible, instinctive goalkeeper. And he sadly died not that long ago. But I really, really love this picture for many reasons. So quite quickly, this is a band called Oh Wonder. Mm-hmm. This was a lesson for me to stop thinking in camera, actually, and to be braver with my ideas. And this was shot for a magazine called Euphoria, and I hired a massive crash mat, had a stepladder in the studio, and I didn't forewarn them that we were going to do this, because you can guarantee that their PR people and their management will say, "Forget it, mate." So they came to the set and they said, "Right, what are we going to do? Why is there a large crash mat over there?" I was like, I had this idea, and I'd looked at their videos and the stuff they'd done, and they looked familiar with movement and action, and I just said, "How do you feel about leaping off that onto there?" And unbelievably, Josephine had brought some dresses with her, bought a load of dresses that were really big and flowing. He's a hunk, and I said, "Would you mind like taking your shirt off?" He was like, "I think that's a logical thing to do for this." And I was like, "Great." And the idea just came together, and then it's quite a massive comp, getting the studio curve and a lot of retouch. And I'm annoyed at myself that I don't think about the sort of retouch elements enough, and I've got to do that more, and just be braver. And this was a real opportunity with some great looking people that were up for doing something. And I really love this. I'm really proud of it. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thanks.
And another one.
This is Matthews, who I've met through the ballroom project I've been shooting, and just this wonderfully beautiful, characterful, colourful dancer who is born with movement. And I thought, and Matthews appeared in this wonderful outfit, and we just thought, let's use the most boring backdrop we can possibly come up with as a sort of background for that. And we just plonked Matthews on somebody's front garden. We didn't have any complaints, which was great. But and Matthews just hit these poses, and like this is like no Photoshop, no retouch, just I think it's just a Lightroom process on this, just really simple, because all the work is just being done, you know. And I absolutely love this, and just it was a connection that I made. And you hold on to these people and think, let's do more stuff. And Matthews lives in Paris, and I just would advise everyone watching this just to be brave and go and ask people, see if they want to do things, see if they'll come with you with your ideas, and you know, and they don't tend to mind. Just being brave is often rewarded.
Absolutely. And this looks a little bit different. What's all this one about?
Well, this dear friend who's become a dear friend, I didn't know them at all. Kathy Hutton contacted me during lockdown and said, I'm so frustrated and bored, and can we go and shoot something? And this is a random person over Twitter that messaged me, and she's a creative director, but just we were connected somehow, and she just said, I really want to go and shoot something, or want to document this period. And I had been thinking the same thing, but didn't know how. And we just went out in our exercise periods and used the white line that you can hopefully see there as a sort of physical barrier, to represent a physical barrier. And this is the 2 meters project, where we just went out and documented a bit of people's experience about how they're feeling about London and lockdown, and set up a light and set up the camera and just shot a few portraits, and it did really, really well. We put it on, she was quite connected to people in advertising, so we got it on billboards and got really nice shots of our work on billboards over the summer on digital screens, and it just evolved into a thing. And it was from a random inquiry, and again, just to illustrate, saying yes to things without overthinking it. It's like, let's see if anything comes of this, Somebody approached me and said, let's go and shoot stuff, and I just said yes, and I just would advise, again, everyone watching this, to find ways to engage with other people. It can be a terribly solitary existence, and to try and expand your network and float up opportunities. Quite often it's not even the end result, it's what comes from the journey. Now, that's a bit Instagram pithy cliche, that, but it really I've profited loads from just being the guy who's like, yeah, okay, let's give it a go, so.
And I get the sense from you, although you do a lot of work with celebrities, your projects are really important to you. So projects like this, or whether you also worked with Two Wheels for Life, I think.
Oh yeah.
And also you've been doing, not necessarily a photography project, but working together with schools as well. Can you tell us just a little bit about that? Or?
Well, photography is an astonishing gift, and people need it. Lots and lots of NGOs and charities need quality imagery, and photography has been really good to me. And I just think if everybody who sees this went and contacted a local charity or NGO or school and said, can I shoot for you? Can I offer photography at a professional standard or a really good quality? And how many yeses you'd get. Again, all the good things that can roll out and expand from there. Like, I love doing, so I have got a books project, which maybe people might be able to help with. They can reach out and contact me, where I'm donating via you school photography books to schools. And we've given away about 2,000 books so far from people that are just fed up with the clutter on their shelves or want to replace them so they can buy more. And I know what to do with those books. So if you've got some and you can spare them, then please reach out and we'll find a way to get a hold of them. And, Sony was incredible. And I can say this without Ben, knowing that they donated a load of cameras to my project, and we were able to go out, weren't we? And to 2 schools and give them, completely transform their digital photography setups. And that was a really lovely thing to do. So we donated loads of books and gave them cameras. We even got some lighting systems. And, we all have the capacity through photography to offer to charities or schools, or be what it may, what we do as a gift. And that really feeds my soul when I'm saying yes to corporate work and commercial opportunities. That's great, but that enables all this other stuff to happen too. And I think it's important that we all try and give back without wanting to sound too righteous, but it's important to me. And I've been around the world. It's brilliant what some of the stuff that just owning a bag of cameras and it has enabled me to do, So yeah, you'll never get me complaining about that.
Well, thank you for your time today, Tom. If people want to see more of your stuff, where can they find you?
If you haven't had enough already, you can look up tomoldham.com or at TommyOPhoto on the gram.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you, all of you.